Hey everyone, welcome to another $1,000 strap search. I've got my $1,000 in singles here and I'm about to show you what I found. But before I do, let's talk about this week's tip. This week, I am starting a 3-part series because my bank had someone deposit 3,000 singles. Okay, so this week will be the first 1,000, next week the second 1,000, third week, third 1,000, of course. But my tip for this week is ask your bank questions. My bank doesn't get 3,000 singles deposited every single day. So when they had that, I asked, I said, well, how did these come about? How is it that somebody deposited all these singles? Did they give you a story? There's got to be some kind of story, right? Just out of pure curiosity, you have to ask, how did you get all these? Well, this particular person was a server. And I think they were a bartender. I'm not 100% on that, but it came from a guy who put all of his singles that he got in tips, he put them away over the course of the year, okay? And now that we're getting into the holiday season and he's looking to buy Christmas presents, he cashed out all of his singles. That was his yearly savings account. All of the singles that he got in tips, that went into a box. Everything else, I guess, he kept. But he ended up saving $3,000 just by saving $1 bills from his tips. So I thought to myself, well, that's going to be kind of interesting because first and foremost, whenever I tell you guys about Where's George notes, I always tell you to use them in places that are going to get spent. Don't just take them to the bank, spend them, and hopefully at places that will use them as change and keep them circulating. So I assumed I'd find some other Where's George notes in these groups. I also thought it would be interesting to know for a fact if I found anything worth any additional money that this had most certainly passed through other people's hands and were given out for free. And then not just given out for free, but then the person who got them didn't bother to look at them and turned them into the bank and had well, you know what I'm saying. It's just interesting to know that if anything worth money passed through somebody's hands and they didn't even bother to look. Anyway, let's take a look at what I found because, well, I was excited to go through these. Like I said, this is part 1. Let's slide those out of the way. And, uh-oh, what's that? All right, let's see what we got. First of all, I found a really high number. Now, when I say high numbers, it doesn't qualify as a high number. We'll get into that in a second. When you start talking about low serial numbers, you want to see 5 zeros to start with. So 00000 and then 850 would be a low serial number. That number is worth money. If you have that would be considered a 3-digit because it would just be 85 or 850. If you had a 4-digit, if the 0 was a 1, that would be 1850. A lot of people consider that a low serial number. It's low, but it's not valuable. It has to be a 3-digit or less. So let's flip that. If you're talking about the high side, they print notes up to 96 million. Well, this is 9599. So to be a high number that's worth money, you would need one more 9, 95999. That would consider it to be a very high number, which would also have some value. Since this is just 9599, it doesn't qualify as a high number, but it is a relatively high serial number, and I don't find high serial numbers that often. So I pulled that. I found an alternator. This has 7 as the alternator, 47078747. Some trinaries, 0s, 3s, and 7s, 1s, 6s, and 9s. Some people would call that a rotator, but to me, when you rotate it, the 1 is clearly upside down. So just a trinary for me. This is 4s, 7s, and 8s. And quads, quad 3s, quad 5s. Some stars. 2017 A star. Check your stars. Make sure they are not filled. Over the course of my searching, I have run across, I think, 2 that I've found, and I think I purchased 1. But anyway, those are rare. Okay. Out of 300,000 notes, or almost 400,000 notes that I may have searched now, to only come across 2 or 3 of those, yeah, that's rare. Let's see, 2017 star, 2013 star, as I start dropping stuff. What's this one? 2013 star, yep. Another 2013. This one is a 2006 star note. And then we get the older notes. This is a 2003A, really rough shape on this one. 2003A, much better shape. 2003A, also rough. Nice 2003. 2003, that is not an error. That's what happens when someone gets this wet and smears it. So it's an ink smear, but it's not an error. Odds are there was a drop of alcohol or something on there other than water, and that caused some of the ink to dissolve and then get smeared. Once again, not an error. 2001, nice shape on the 2001. 1999. And I found one of these. This is quad pairs, 66557722. This is the only way that I would ever save 4 pairs. Some people take 4 pairs when the numbers are scattered. I only take them when they're together. And just to give you an idea, when you've got 4 pairs like that, there are only 5,600 combinations. It's a ridiculously low number of actual combinations available. I'm not saying that these are worth anything. I would understand why, because they are hard to come by, but the problem is who's going to buy this particular number? You know, I would not be purchasing any of these. I wouldn't purchase them. I wouldn't sell them. I wouldn't tell people that they're worth anything in particular. And the book on fancy serial numbers also says that they are not worth anything over face value. That doesn't change the fact that I thought it was neat to find. So I'm adding it to my collection, which is what collections are for. So that was my quads. And, oh, I did find another note. 4869, 4869. I found a repeater. And when I started going through the notes, this was the 4th note that I saw. So here I am with 3,000 notes. Note number 4 was a repeater. 4869, 4869. That was cool. I was very excited to get that, and very excited that 4 notes into my gigantic search, I was finding good stuff. All right, so what did I pull out this week? This week, I brought out an older note. I don't want to call it rare, because the price doesn't seem to make it seem rare, but truth be told, it actually is. This is a 1929 Federal Reserve Bank note $100 bill. So what is this really? Well, there were first obsolete notes where banks would print their own money, and you would never know whether or not any of the banks were any good. Then the federal government stepped in and started checking with banks, and if they were good, they were designated national banks and given a charter number. So now you had all these different banks backing our currency. The government kind of wanted to step away from that, so they came up with the idea of a national currency like this, which is, instead of random banks backing the notes, the actual Federal Reserve banks would back the notes. And since there's only 12 of them, that made it that much easier to print, rather than having to change it for all 15,000 different banks that wanted to do this. So having 12 Federal Reserve banks, it made it very easy for each individual Federal Reserve bank to back currency. So this particular one is from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And if you actually read the note, it says national currency secured by United States bonds deposited with the Treasury of the United States of America, or like deposit of other securities. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York will pay to the bearer on demand $100. And there's the redeemable clause. So this is a series of 1929. And like I said, the actual Federal Reserve Bank of New York was the one that was backing this. This has the very familiar look on the back as you're used to seeing. This one's slightly off center. But the thing is this is the $100 bill. Now, at the time, there were $500 bills, $1,000 bills, 5,000, 10,000. There was even 100,000, but that wasn't available for circulation. But as far as nationals went, as far as Federal Reserve banknotes went, the 100 was the largest denomination. And since we're talking a note that's almost 100 years old, well, these must be really expensive, right? And they must be really rare, right? Well, that's the thing. Let's open up the big book. This is Paper Money of the United States, as you guys know, 23rd edition. And I open it up to the section on small size Federal Reserve banknotes. And here is the 100s. Look at those print runs. New York, that's the one I have, has 480,000. And then Cleveland has 276,000, so 250,000 notes there. And some of those other ones, Dallas, those have to be misprints, right? How is it Dallas printed 36,000 notes and they're only worth $200 to $400? That's crazy. Especially considering that my note, fold this over this way, here we go. The New York note that I have, like I said, they printed 480,000, and it starts off at $160. In a 12, it's $185. In a 20, you're talking $200. And if you find one, choice uncirculated, $375. Gem perfect is $1,000. Now, on the high side for that Dallas note, you can see, let's see, it starts at $200, but on the high side, if it's Gem 65, you're talking $9,000. So it is worth 10 times more that way. But it's kind of surprising that low side is as low as it is. Even in a 20, it's only double, $400. So that's interesting. So yeah, when these were new, they were rare. I mean, think about that. If you go looking for star notes right now, they're usually at a print runs of 3.2 million. There weren't 3.2 million total of these printed. And there's probably even, I'm sure there's a lot less of these floating around now. So it is the highest denomination you can get, which usually means it's worth the most, yet it's still reasonably priced. And worst case scenario, it's worth $100 to spend. You can still spend them. I mean, granted, nobody would, but it's still a $100 bill. So keep that in mind. If you see one for $180, technically you're paying $80 for a $100 bill. All right, if you learned anything new this week, go ahead and hit that like button. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please subscribe. Love reading all your comments. Guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.